Well, good afternoon and good morning, depending on wherever in the world you're joining us from today. My name is Rep Buttle. I am so privileged to be the co-executive director of the Small Business Roundtable. And I'm so excited today to be moderating a conversation with so many amazing panelists. And in particular, I think a topic that when we planned the panel, we didn't know was going to be so incredibly relevant. But I think today, given the context of COVID and given what we're seeing with the racial injustice in our societies, it couldn't be a more important topic. Before I turn it over to our panel and to our partner, PayPal, I just wanted to go through a few sort of housekeeping items. Most of you by now are technical wizards, but we really want this to be conversational. So if you look to the right of your screen, you'll see your GoToWebinar box. We encourage folks to be active with us through the chat, to ask questions there. We really want to make sure that we build in enough time for the feedback. And so today I'll do introductions. We'll hear a welcome from PayPal. We'll have a panel discussion with our leaders, and then hopefully we'll hear closing remarks. Before I turn it over to PayPal, I just wanted to make some very brief comments on behalf of the Small Business Roundtable. I just want to mention that we could not be more deeply saddened and quite frankly appalled by the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and many others who've lost their lives due to brutality and quite frankly racial injustice in our society. And we just want to state that as an organization, we're incredibly committed to the Black community and millions of people who face racial discrimination every day. And I know that that's some of what we'll hear from today. We're really thrilled to also be joined by Ron Busby, who's the president of the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce today, who will share some of that. But before we formally hop into the discussion, I wanted to turn it over to Paul with the PayPal team, who wanted to offer some welcome remarks. So, Paul.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rhett, and thanks to Small Business Roundtable for convening this important conversation. We really appreciate the mission and values that Small Business Roundtable has as an organization, and really reflects what we at PayPal try to embody as well. For PayPal, small businesses are really a part of our DNA. We see it as a responsibility and a key pillar to our business to not only support small businesses, but really expand opportunity to underserved as part of our larger mission of financial inclusion and democratizing opportunity for everyone. Leadership is difficult, even in normal times, and leadership can also take different forms at different times. Small businesses are facing an unprecedented crisis with the coronavirus pandemic, but as Rhett mentioned, also dealing with the fallout from recent events that have really highlighted the inequities that persist in our culture and in our country. And while PayPal's core values have always been centered around inclusion and equality, we also recognize that we don't have all the answers. Leadership can also take the form of a commitment to engage in dialogue with the Black community and with those that are experiencing inequality in their everyday lives. And we just hope to learn and listen how we can be better citizens as individuals, but also as a corporation. Small businesses, whether they have employees or whether they're solo entrepreneurs, also need to be prepared to lead through times of crisis. And this can be centered around a plan of action for when that crisis takes place, or developing a support network of other entrepreneurs to be able to bounce ideas off of, forming a collective voice. And it can also be deciding what you stand for as a company, and how you want to define yourself in how you're marketing and how you're selling, in how you're developing a customer base. And as the country continues to face, not only the current unrest, but also the devastating pandemic, at PayPal, we are certainly recognizing that recovery will not be swift. It will be difficult. It will take time. And a pivotal part of the health of the overall economy is all of us coming together to support entrepreneurs, both in the immediate and the long term. I know that we will continue to try to lead in supporting underserved small businesses and ensure that our products and services are reaching all communities, democratizing commerce, democratizing opportunity and financial inclusion. And we also hope to help you small businesses lead, leading your employees, your communities, and leading towards economic recovery, because we know that small businesses will play a key role in that recovery. So with that, thanks again to Small Business Roundtable. Really looking forward to a robust discussion today. And with that, I'll hand it back to Rhett.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Paul. And Paul's going to disappear and my camera's going to come on, but Paul is not going far because he's going to stay around for the question and answer in case anything comes up about PayPal. I wanted to introduce all of our speakers today. And so I'm really thrilled to welcome them all. Before I do so, I did want to mention that we're really excited that we were able to sort of conduct a special collaboration today. The National Association of Women Business Owners, which is led by Jen Earle, is joining us today. But what is super exciting is this is actually part of their advocacy day, which they have reimagined into a virtual advocacy day. And so I know we have many NAWBO members on the line today who are participating in this session as part of their advocacy day. And so before we did introductions, Jen, I just wanted to turn it over to you to see if you wanted to share anything about the advocacy day, and then we'll do introductions and hop into the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Rhett, and for Paul for pulling this together. And the Small Business Roundtable is really an amazing resource for small businesses. NAWBO was born 45 years ago, which is really amazing. They were the first organization that was born for women in business, and it's primarily an advocacy organization. We started grassroots to really formulate the voice of women entrepreneurs at a time where they weren't recognized. And so we pull together an advocacy day every year where we go to Washington, D.C. We listen to our legislators. We have a lot of dialogue with the SBA, a number of others that are there on the Hill advocating on behalf of women business owners. So pulling it up into a virtual space this year was a little bit tricky, and I'm so proud of our team for the amazing work that they've done and for all of those that have come together to really support us during this time and showing up for us in a virtual way. And then also for all of our members out there that have really, jumped on the bandwagon of virtual convening and are showing up for us this week. So thank you guys all so much for your participation, for continuing to show up for yourself, for women in business, and for the collective voice of women entrepreneurs.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jen. I'm thrilled to have this collaboration with NAWBO, and thank you for finding the time to fit into your advocacy schedule. So let me just quickly introduce the rest of our panelists, and then we'll go ahead and we'll hop into the content for today's discussion. In addition to Jen, who you've all met, who's the CEO of the National Association of Women Business Owners, we're also joined by Keith Hall, who's the President and CEO of the National Association for the Self-Employed. And Keith, I think you're sitting in Texas, so thanks for dialing in.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And then we also have Corinne Hodges, who's the founder and CEO of the Association of Women Business Centers. So thank you so much, Corinne, for being here. And then finally, we have Ron Busby, who's the President and CEO of the US Black Chambers, Inc., USBC. And Ron is with us via telephone. You still with us, Ron?
I am. Great to be here.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. Why don't we go ahead and kick off the discussion here? And Ron, if it's okay, I'd love to stay with you and kind of talk a little bit about what we heard in Paul's opening comments. And we all know that this is an incredibly challenging time for the Black community. And I would love to just start with, what does leadership mean to you in this moment as someone who is the voice of Black business? The US Black Chambers, Inc. is the voice of Black business in our nation's capital. How are you thinking about leadership in this moment?
Well, thank you, Rhett, for having us on this afternoon. And I know this was a little after the fact. We kind of got invited to this conversation because of what is happening. And it is difficult days in the United States right now, especially for what is the term leadership. As you know, the US Black Chamber was founded on 5 key pillars, and the first one being advocacy. And here across the country, over the last few days, we've seen what the lack of leadership can lead us into, as well as the desire and need for good leadership. And the US Black Chamber has been at the forefront of the conversation over the past few years as it relates to advocacy. Now, recently, we obviously all know about the conditions that COVID-19 faced upon the Black community, which was totally disproportionate for that of the white community. We were dying at higher rates. We're being infected at higher rates. We're having to be forced to go to work as a workforce that is not being protected or even being appreciated for what they do, called essential workers, but at the same time not receiving essential pay. Then we move into the whole payroll protection program. And as I stated from the outset, any program entitled payroll protection plan was not even enlisted from a concept of Black-owned businesses. And so from our standpoint, leadership is extremely important right now, as well as the lack of leadership. We've seen conditions across this country that have been so outlandishly racist that even the country, as well as other countries and continents, have had to have a voice in this conversation. We've seen Black men jogging be shot. We've seen men in Central Park having the police called on them for your lover, and police walk in without a warrant and still shoot you. And the latest case we've seen where a Black man was killed because of facing an unexpected challenge of a $20 bill that some people say was fake, while other people say we don't even know. There are challenges that our community is facing. And I think part of the problem is that we're looking for leadership in some of the same folk that have led us in the past. And I think good leadership is going to come from new faces, new organizations, as well as new voices. Some of the young people that are out on the front lines today, as well as over the last couple of weeks, are having conversations that have been being had for 20, 30 plus years. I lived in Oakland, California in the 80s and was there during the Rodney King beatings. And 30 plus years later, we're dealing with the same circumstances. I was living in Oakland when the O.J. Simpson case happened, and we saw protests from the other side. And then when it comes to business, I saw what happened in San Francisco when we had the earthquake and the disproportionate opportunities that Black businesses faced as opposed to our white firms. Racism has been rampant in America for centuries, and I think that because of what you're seeing over the last couple of weeks, it has got to be addressed. One of the biggest concerns that I have is, many of you know that my father was in the Black Panther Party. It was founded in 1966 based upon leadership from a community, policing and advocating on issues that were pertinent to its community. We can no longer look to the outside of our communities to give policy as well as legal issues that will address us without having our input into those conversations. I wasn't a big supporter of Dr. King back in the day, and I can remember a conversation that I had with my father about that conversation. And my father said, one of the challenges that Dr. King and his movement is having is that he wants to integrate us. And in fact, it may happen. The challenge is he's integrating us into a burning house. Without great leadership right now, you are going to find this continuing to happen around the country. And so while many of the folk on the phone have been supporters of the U.S. Black Chamber, all of our voices need to be had. It can't be leadership from one group, one voice, or one organization. This is a challenge for all of Americans to get involved in, because the only way we're going to keep this house from burning down is everyone's participation. And so with that, I ask all of you to continue to support your own initiatives as it relates to racism or the lack thereof, as it relates to diversity, and true inclusion for all of the Americans. Systemic racism is a fact. We can no longer hide behind the fact that we got political folk or we have leaders that we have elected to be the voice of America. The voice of America is within this conversation. The U.S. Black Chamber says that it is the voice for Black business, but our voice is only heard when it's disseminated in all of our organizations. Again, this fight can't just be about a Black fight versus a white fight. This is an American fight, and we need leaders from across the board to participate. And so, as you continue to see the efforts of the U.S. Black Chamber and the things that we're doing to move for equality and justice, it's not just about what we can do for Black America, but in fact, what we can do for America. And so with that, I will continue to be on the call. I'm looking forward to the dialogue. Understand that business and the success, long-term success, is extremely important to that agenda. An economic agenda is one in which the United States Black Chamber is definitely behind, and ask all of you to participate.
Thanks, Ron. I mean, it's super critical framing for the conversation today. And my question, I think, was where you were ending, and I'd love to bring the other panelists in this, but quickly, can you frame up for us, I mean, what is small business part of the solution here? And what does that look like from your perspective? I know when we think about wealth inequality and health disparities, you know, building wealth in the Black community is critically important. And one of the ways that are proven wealth building strategies in our country are through the empowerment of business. And I'm wondering how you think about that. And then, you know, would love to also hear from some of our other panelists about the support tools you think about through entrepreneurship with wealth building. But Ron, what do you think about that as sort of a prism, and how do you think about small business as part of a change agent strategy?
Sure. I think during the 60s, the 50s, the 40s, it was really about civil rights. We needed our equality, justice, we needed housing, education, civil rights. What we now need now is what we call silver rights. We need rights to an economic agenda that will shorten or just prove the whole wealth gap conversation. If the average white family has $114,000 worth of wealth versus the average Black family having less than $100 worth of wealth, that is a issue that we need to have. We need to talk about how can we bridge the wealth between whites and Blacks so that we truly do have an economy that supports us all. You know, a lot of folk talk about the $1 trillion that Blacks have to spend. Blacks need to have that conversation as well as our white counterparts. How can we improve the conditions of Black Americans across the country collectively? When I'm doing better, we are all doing better. It can't be one-off of one individual having success while the rest of his community doesn't. That's what leads to looting and riots. We have to see equality as well as opportunity. And I think small businesses, particularly African-American owned businesses, are the core as well as the future of our economy. We hire Blacks. So if unemployment is going to be a concern, you have to address the concerns of Black businesses. And so when you're out looking to spend money over the next few months, find a Black-owned business and support them. If you're looking to support our issue, donate to Black organizations that you know are doing the right thing. And most importantly, continue to support our issues, our advocacy issues, as well as the policies that are affecting our communities, short as well as long term.
Helpful. And I think, you know, for me and Corinne, I want to come to you because I think, you know, I want to hear about how the women's business development centers are faring in this context because you guys are so present in community. But I think for me, what COVID did was COVID just really put a spotlight on a lot of things that were happening in our society already. And I think that is playing out in the context of what Ron is talking about here with inequality and inequity. And I just, you know, what is it that women business owners are seeing? How are they responding to COVID and the situation on the ground? And would love to just hear a little bit more from the perspective of that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And I appreciate Ron's comments so much because small businesses minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses make up that underserved aspect of the economy who have not had the full opportunity to participate to their potential in the economy for a variety of reasons, because of lack of access to capital, because of other barriers, lack of social networks and other, I mean, the list goes on. So to your point, Rhett, I think that's where the Women's Business Center comes in as this sort of secret tool. Just as an example, I was speaking day before yesterday with a minority woman-owned business in Chicago called Go Logic, and she conceived of her business in 2016 as a technology platform that applied specifically for daycare. Well, when COVID hit and daycare industry shut down, she pivoted her business using tools at our Women's Business Center in Chicago, and she now has a technology platform that applies to the retail industry and to lots of other small businesses. So because she was empowered with the tools she needed from a Women's Business Center, she now is a full participant, not only in the economy, but in the solution for these small businesses who also need to pivot their business. So they're not only part of the solution, I mean, they are the solution, they are the economy, and they make up the fabric of who we are.
Super helpful. And Jen, I wanted to go to you next because I know NAWBO has a leadership institute. You have the work that you do through your advocacy arm, but then there's also a leadership institute. I'm wondering, you know, what have you sort of learned through years of setting up this leadership institute that has, you know, informed sort of the situation we're in with COVID, informed the conversation around the intersection of race and business leadership. And are there any lessons to sort of draw from that could be relevant for our audience?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for bringing that up. Leadership is a really, really crucial component, as we all know, in running businesses. And as it was stated earlier, it's really hard a lot of times, especially in situations like this where you're trying to lead with grace in really uncertain times. I think like leading through crisis requires and this is one of the things that we continually bring up, the different kinds of leadership styles. And one of them is like really looking at the long term of running and leading, and then also the short term. And how do you get through today? How do you get through next week? How do you get through the week after that? What does that look like for small businesses? And I think that also being open, like Corinne said, to pivot is super, super crucial to be able to figure out like, okay, I'm offering this today and I'm doing it this way, but I have to switch my business model really, really quickly to be able to figure out how I can accommodate my clients with different products and services that perhaps I wouldn't have been able to think about, to be innovative and be resilient. Also, like technology too has been a major thing, being agile with technology and figuring out how to lead when your team is sitting around a Zoom call, you know, and you're looking at everybody's faces and trying to figure out like, how do you really how can you really feel your people and understand, you know, where they are and help guide them in times of fear, you know, when people are feeling really unsettled, and how can you keep them to a place where they feel like they want to be productive and they want to continue working when they're surrounded by all of this uncertainty. And it's hard to keep the productivity and the focus. But I think like with the leadership that we do, it's always recognizing that leadership is an evolution for every individual. And in every case, you go into it knowing I'm going to get something different from this leadership experience than I am from the one that was last year, because I heard maybe the same thing, but in a very different light, because now I'm dealing with a crisis. Whereas last year, we didn't have a crisis, and you know what I mean? So it's like kind of that evolution of thought of what am I dealing with right now and how am I going to be able to use that to move forward?
Makes sense. Keith, I want to hear a little bit from you, because when I think about self-employed, you know, I think about the folks who are really like bootstrapping it, they're resilient, they're, you know, and I think in moments like this, you know, business owners who we find to be the most entrepreneurial, but resilience becomes such a huge factor. And what are you hearing from your membership, who are really our nation's smallest businesses, about how they're thinking about the time and the context and thinking about bouncing back?
Yeah, I think the things that I hear most of all is just fear of the unknown. You know, we're facing COVID-19. We're 2 months into this, a little more than that, into this process. Some people see an end to the conflict, not the conflict, but see an end to the virus itself. Some people don't. So that even adds its own extra conflict. So I think the thing that most small businesses are concerned about is the unknown. What I get most encouraged about is when I see the optimism of moving forward, knowing that this will come to an end at some point. You know, back to the unrest that we're facing, the things that Ron said, you know, I totally support Ron. It, you know, it hurts my heart when I see individuals making bad choices. We've certainly seen some questionable decisions from leadership, if I can say it that way. And when you take that leadership back to the smallest of small businesses, I think the thing that I would add, you know, if you look at me, and I don't mean to be, you know, I'm an old white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male. And I'm sitting here saying that this hurts my heart, the things that we're facing, but it would be extremely arrogant and extremely naive for me to sit here and say, I truly understand. I want to understand and I want to be supportive. So as a leader, the things that I hear from the best small businesses that I can think of is recognizing that when you are in a leadership position, even if you don't have employees, people are watching what you do. They're watching the things that you say. You may not believe that, you may not know that, but whether it's your children, it's the people you work with, the people that work for you, your customers, your vendors, those people see what you do and what you say every day. So to me, true leadership is finding the right path, finding equality, finding a concern for all people, and letting that show in your decisions. As Ron mentioned, find a local business that represents someone that you want to support. If that's a small business that you can support, find some way to do that. And find that optimism. And another thing that I've heard a lot from particularly the smallest businesses is many have gotten a PPP loan, but they're leaving it in the bank. They're worried about the forgiveness concept. They don't know how hard the application is going to be. Is it going to turn into a loan? So they're hesitant about starting that new project or hiring that independent contractor that typically does their graphics design work. And I would encourage them to be a leader in your community and spend the money. Go out there like Ron talked about, find an underserved business and put them to work. Because the whole concept of all of these stimulus packages is so that we take that money and we spend it and grow our businesses. And that's how we turn the economic problems that we have around. So to me, leadership is more than just a word. It's recognizing that whatever you do, whomever you represent, whatever you look like, whatever organization you belong to, people are making judgments based on what you do. And knowing that, to me, is the first step toward quality leadership.
Super helpful, Keith. Ron and Corinne, I wanted to come to you. I'm going to the question box a little bit earlier than I normally do, but we're getting so much feedback from the conversation, and there's a lot of questions about Black businesses and women, and in particular, how within your business you lead. The one particular question is asking about, recognizing that discrimination is systemic. What is the role that business owners can play in sort of exposing this within their businesses, both for business owners of color and for women, so that they can have productive conversations with their teams and with their communities. And Ron, I don't know if you have thoughts or insights on that sort of local level, but I think for the business owners who are on the call, they're really thinking about what does this mean for them in the teams they lead. Do you have any thoughts? And then maybe Corinne would ask you to build off Ron's thoughts. Hey, Ron, are you still with us? Maybe you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, sir. There you go.
I think that's a great question. I believe that America is looking at what's happening and is trying to determine who we are going to be when we come out of this. And we do believe that we will come out of this as a better America with the conversations that are being had. And so for those that are looking to how to participate, how to support, how to better lead, I think you have to look in the mirror and you have to get up and say, each and every day, I have the ability to make choices to lead my community, lead my business in either direction. And I think we have to hold ourselves accountable first for the decisions that we make each and every day. Is this a good decision for a new America? or is this back to what we have had and seen in the past? And what we have seen in the past has not worked. We have left it up to other individuals, both state, local, and federal governments have all played a role. But I think individual roles, individual decisions are the most important ones that we can make each and every day. We can't put this off on anyone else. We can't hold anyone else accountable if we're not holding ourselves accountable first.
Super helpful. And Corinne, do you have a frame on this from sort of your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Ron said, and I would add in kind of connection to those remarks that leadership in this space, it's action, and it's forward-looking. So, you know, if we're ruminating as business owners on poor decisions who may have contributed to the place where we are now, then we acknowledge that, and then we have to take proactive steps, action, not being complacent to make change. We think about this transformation of the world that we're in light of COVID and in light of what we're learning about our culture and the continuation of the most awful forms of discrimination and worse in our society. And so we all have a responsibility to make that change within our own organizations, within our own relationships, our business relationships, our vendor relationships, our employee relationships. Every single one of those matters, and you can't just dismiss any element of that. And I would say, you know, being proactive as we move forward, and you know, and I think that embodies what Keith was talking about. You're being watched, and so as a leader, what you do not only is affecting those relationships you're actively in and that you touch, but you may be also influencing those around you to make changes in their relationships.
Super helpful. Keith, I wanted to get your and maybe Jen's thoughts on, you know, as small business owners being community leaders, communication is key about how they communicate about these issues, how they communicate around hope. Do you have thoughts around how small business owners
I kind of lost you there, but I think I know where you were going. So I'll just start. Tell me if I'm not on the right page. I think there's an anomaly, a paradox that's happening right now. As we've had this shelter in place, you know, we're apart from everyone. Over the last, you know, pick a years, over the last 20 years, technology has put us further and further away from face-to-face handshaking, one-on-one communication within our communities. And I think, interestingly enough, this has even, you know, fast forwarded that. Two months ago, Zoom was what I played cards with my grandson. That's the sound I made when I was playing cards. But this has been a fast forward on technology for communication online. And it's my belief that as we come out of this thing, that the small businesses that are going to be the most successful are those that couple this communication vehicle, technology, Zoom calls, there's so many different platforms, but those that are in their community, leading by example, providing their services, providing their products, meeting the members of their community, and being a leader in their community are going to be the ones that make the biggest difference and are going to be the ones that have the most success. And I think that's kind of a throwback in saying that as we come out of this, we're not going to go to sole Zoom calls. We're not going to be online exclusively. I think that we'll need to be a presence within the community. And coupling the COVID-19 issue with the unrest that we have, I think those things go hand in hand. Just like Ron just mentioned, and as Corinne mentioned, you know, being able to go back into the community and be part of that community, all of the community, the entire community. I think that's how true leadership can make a difference in both of these situations.
Super helpful. Jen, did you have thoughts on communication and how your members are tackling this?
Yeah, you know, I feel like with our organization, we're so diverse and we always work, you know, more and more into that vein. I think that by providing an inclusive and diverse space for our membership, everyone is able to utilize their voice. And I, you know, Our members in different parts of the country are all really pulling together and working toward a better future for their communities. And I think that the stronger that we can make our local chapters and our communities, the better that's going to be. The other thing is like modeling, right? Modeling how you want to see your community, modeling through your business, the people that you employ and you bring in and that you circle with. What does that look like? How do you represent the best diversity within your organization so that you can showcase that that's what you stand for out in the general public? Yeah, I mean, we've been, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to build off that. I want to stick with you and Ron. There's a lot coming up about leadership through advocacy and how business owners can use their voice. And so Ron, I wanted to get your thoughts on that in this moment. And then Jen, you're in the middle of an advocacy day and encouraging business owners to use their voice. So Ron, do you have thoughts on leadership, small business owners being advocates right now, and is that an important part of leadership? And then Jen would love to hear how that's manifesting over these last few days in your interactions with policymakers. Ron?
Yeah, I think if you look at who we are as an organization, our 5 pillars is topped with advocacy. I tell the story all the time that when I came here, our offices were with the National Small Business Association, and right across the hall from us was the Sugar Beet Growers Association. And we thought everybody in Washington, D.C. had someone advocating on their issues except for Black business owners. There was no one saying, this is important to our members, constituents, as well as our local communities. I think America looks at Black people somewhat monolithically, thinking that we all are employees, that we all have the same concerns. Many of our issues are systemic across the country, but as business owners, we face different challenges than any other group of business owners in this country. The same racism that we face as employees, they're tripled in many cases when you're a business owner. So now I'm faced with hiring from my own community, keeping the economy flowing in my own community while facing challenges from state, local governments, as well as corporate citizens, as well as trying to be just Black in America. All of those facing us at the same time is a true challenge for a Black CEO. We put on all of those hats every morning that we wake up, going to work and still trying to be positive and having great attitude so that our employees still want to come to work and still feel like the future is positive. So I ask all of the CEOs that are on the call that are members of the U.S. Black Chamber, continue to do what we're doing. We truly are the voice of Black business. And so our communities across the country are looking to us to ensure that our businesses, our communities, as well as the employees and organizations that we support have sustainability. And that means making sure that we are continuing to educate ourselves, making sure that we're still going after the credit that we're going to need to have long-term success. We have to double down on all of the things that we have done in the past, because the future is truly ours. The future of America lies in the hands of Black people. This election and the future of this country is going to be based on what we do. And when we decide the agenda, I don't really care what the rest of the majority of America says. Collectively, we are the majority. We represent $1 trillion of spend, but more importantly, we represent the culture. We represent what the young people are wanting to hear and do. And you see that down throughout the protests. And so for those business leaders that are on here, guys, this is the time that I implore you, please, 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 don't give up. Do not give up. The fight is just beginning.
And Jen, I mean, how are you seeing sort of leadership manifested through your own advocacy days? And I know that folks have been, on Zooms and virtual meetings with policymakers. And what does that look like for you all?
Yeah, I mean, I think the overall national advocacy, I think, is so very crucial, right? So very important for us to use a collective voice. But I feel like just what Ron said, just as important as what we're doing and educating at the national level, it's so crucial at the local level. Like these are the people that are actually driving your local policy, right? And if you're not really engaged in your city, who your mayor is, your governor, and you're not really working at those conversations, and you're not working toward those votes, that's super, super crucial, because that's just going to feed up, right? We got to start where we are. And so I encourage all of our NAWBO members on the line today that are watching, participate in the national advocacy. It's crucial, but participate in your local advocacy. And I know that there are a number of our chapters that are really engaged in their local advocacy efforts on the ground. And I would continue to encourage your members to vote for the right people, for the right causes, with the right mission and the right values, because that's where the significant change is going to happen.
Jen, it's like you were reading the question box. We have a question from Lorraine, and she was asking how much leadership and change needs to happen at the local versus the national level. And so I was going to invite Keith and Corinne to respond to that. You started the thing, but Keith, I mean, I know you are very active in DC, but you live in Texas. And so, you know, I wonder how you reconcile that. And Corinne, as we've discussed before, you have chapters all, I shouldn't say chapters, I should say affiliates all across the country. And so, you know, what does that sort of local engagement look like for you all? But Keith, your perspective?
Yeah, I'm from Texas, born and raised. I'm a CPA. I ran an accounting firm, so I would not consider myself a lobbyist. I'm not a DC insider. I'm a newbie. I'm an outsider, whatever you want to call that. But for me, and in my heart, there's three different pieces to the advocacy concept. None of them work without all three. Anyone that is lacking breaks the whole thing down. Number one is a voice in DC. People actually talking to congressional staff members, to congressional leaders, to potential congressional leaders, letting them know what is important for small business, for the Black community, for women-owned businesses, for any issue that is out there. That voice has to be heard. That is an extremely important part of advocacy. The second leg is the local side. And this is what we just talked about on leadership, about you talk the talk in DC, but then you also have to be that in your own community. And you know, there's a sappy saying that the things you do are so loud that I can't hear what you're saying. So you have to be the leader that you want to be, again, in your community, for equality, for justice, for all of those things. You have to have that local piece of advocacy, or the voice that you talk over and over again in DC is lost. And then the third piece, which may be the most important, and I would say this to everyone that's listening today, is that we need to ask our members, those who are listening to us, those who are watching us, like we talked about, we need to ask them to make your voice known as well. Take a few minutes to contact your congressional leaders, contact your senators, your House representative, the president. Let them know the problems that you're struggling with. Put the pressure on them. And there's always different numbers, but if there's 30 million self-employed business owners out there, under 50 employees, whatever number you want to use, if all 30 million of those people sent the same email on the same day, would our congressional leaders listen to that? Would that wake them up? Would that make a difference? So yes, we have to have the advocacy efforts. We need to keep doing the things that we're doing now, like Ron mentioned, very important. We have to be leaders in our local communities. People have to see what we're doing because they're going to watch us. And we need to motivate our members to let their voice be heard. I think those three things together is what advocacy means to me.
Brett, I think you're muted.
Can't hear you.
I was just going to say, I want to take everything that's in the chat box and kind of wrap it up and send it to you all right now. There's like so much interesting conversation, support for what you all are saying. And, you know, I just feel like we're living in this like incredibly problematic time, but small business is this force that kind of cuts through everything. And I'm kind of moved by it actually. But Corinne, I would love to just, you know, hear how you're thinking about it. And then Paul, I wanted to invite you back into the conversation. I'm getting a few questions about PayPal and what's PayPal's role in this process, but Corinne, over to you.
Sure. Yeah, I want to definitely make sure everyone knows about the resources that are out there recognizing that not everyone listening or viewing the presentation today considers themselves a woman-owned small business, and there are plenty of resources out there for everyone. And so I want to direct you to a website that is paid for by taxpayer dollars, COVID, COVID -SB, like smallbusiness.org. There's a local assistance link there, and that allows you to research women's business centers in the local community, or SBDCs, or SCORE chapters, or Veterans Business Outreach Centers. So whatever sort of feels right and is nearby, and not that it has to be in this virtual world, just want you to know there's local assistance there that can support you and those that you know that need it.
Super helpful. Paul, can I invite you to come back? And I'm getting sort of two sort of questions. You know, one is, what do you see as PayPal's role in this conversation about leadership and sort of your experience sitting there? And then just, you know, sheerly, what resources are available from PayPal for small businesses as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that PayPal, as you know, a really large corporation, has an immensely important role in making sure that we are leading by example, that we are conducting, you know, important conversations and dialogue to learn from Black and female-owned businesses and entrepreneurs that are underserved, and hearing what they need. You know, when we first launched our PayPal Small Business Month a couple years ago, it was all founded on these principles of making these underserved voices heard, and also learning from those underserved, knowing that we don't have the answers, that we don't necessarily, you know, have all the right tools, but making sure that we can help to drive some change with kind of the power that we have as a large corporation. You know, I feel like we, you know, are definitely in a good position as we start to think about how we can help. You know, in addition to engaging in those dialogues specific to cultural inequities, we also are continuing to make sure that our product roadmap really focuses on ensuring that the underserved entrepreneurs are the beneficiaries. You know, one of the main things that I always think about when it comes to that side of things is the power that our alternative lending platform has for underserved small businesses. We were participants in the PPP program, but even before that, we had a couple different products that through some of our research, we found are skewing to low and moderate income neighborhoods, minority neighborhoods, female-owned businesses, and that's important as sort of the values for our company to continue to drive those products. And you know, but getting back to what I was saying at the beginning, I think that the most important thing that we're trying to do right now is just listen and learn and figure out what small businesses need and what the communities need.
Super helpful. I'm wary of time. I want to get everyone out here. I have one more question. After this question, I'm going to ask each of our panelists for a takeaway thought. The last question, actually, Ron and Jen, I'm going to ask you to lean into. It's a very specific question, but folks are asking what they can do in this moment to support both Black and women businesses. And so, Ron, I don't know if you want to start, and then Jen would love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. I appreciate the question, because I do believe that the way we're going to get out of this is by everyone supporting Black-owned businesses. Black-owned businesses across the country, we're in every format, we're in every industry, every sector. And so during this time, it is extremely important to find businesses, Black-owned, in your local communities online to support them. It is extremely important because many of those business owners are the leaders in their communities. You can go to our website, usblackchambers.org, and you can support local chambers, local businesses, as well as online businesses. We have a directory. You can go to buyblack.org. Juneteenth, you'll have a June 19th in the Black community is a big day for us. It's the day that many Texans found out that they were free during slavery. And so we are pushing that agenda forward. And then for all of you that are on the call, July the 7th is another important day for us as we are calling for a blackout day. No spending from our community or any community for that factor on July the 7th. We want America to understand that our dollars are important, as well as the lack of our dollars being spent in the economy. And so look forward to us coming out with continuing education. You can go. We also do a Thursday call every week that provides information on our businesses as well as education to better educate our businesses and give them resources that we need. But you can find out all that information at www.usblackchambers.org. And we look for all of your support across the country. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. And before we go to closing thoughts, Jen, your sort of tips of wisdom about how to support women business in this moment.
Yeah, I would just take off of what Ron said, like, in addition to supporting personally, be an advocate. Go out and say, hey, you know what? I found this really amazing business. It's run by a minority business owner. It's run by a woman business owner. I had an amazing experience here. Like, share what you're learning in the community. Also, be a good listener. Oftentimes you can learn so much just about what's happening in your community or with different business owners by just listening to what they're saying and how you might be able to help them or plug them to the appropriate resource. And then the other thing is, like, NAWBO is an organization that is for everybody. So you can join these organizations to support, to learn more, to understand what the impact is from these local organizations in your communities and how you can get more involved to really support at the local and at the national level.
We're getting lots of requests for Corinne for your website, Ron for your website, and Jen for yours. So I want to promise everyone that we'll wrap up all the information, whatever the speakers want, we'll get it out to everyone. I wanted to just close by giving everyone an opportunity to sort of give us wrap-up thoughts. One of the things I'm hearing in the box is folks are looking for really tangible, practical advice in this time about being a leader. And so, any tips that you have that are super practical, I think they'd appreciate that. So I'm just going to make my way through all the speakers. I'm going to start with Paul, and then I'm going to go to Corinne, Keith, Jen, and Ron will ask you to close us out. So Paul, any thoughts, advice for business owners in this moment from a PayPal perspective?
Yeah, I think that I'll leave most of the time to the experts to give their thoughts on some practical solutions. But I just continue to see really I'm always inspired by leaders who as we've talked about drive their business forward through example and bringing their communities together, taking actions to make sure that their values are actually being lived out on a daily basis, and just continuing to grow as a business, but also as an individual, to make sure that you can become a better leader day in and day out. I know that's not much actual practical application in there, but that's just sort of what I'm always struck by when I think about leadership. So defer to the experts as well.
Thanks, Paul. Corinne.
Yeah, I would say leadership is definitely not self first. Leadership is selfless, and if it can't be successful without effective communication. I think that maybe the most practical place that we can apply our day-to-day effort is on really effective communication that doesn't control people, that leads people. Controlling isn't leadership, but if no one's following, you're not effectively leading. And so, I just don't think that I can overemphasize how important the communication is. We've all fallen down in those areas, and it's something that we can all sharpen those skills. So I would encourage you to do that. And remember that leadership is about the future. It's about facing forward. And just because maybe not everyone can see that vision of the future, it's your job to pave the way And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're in the front of the line.
Keith.
Yeah, I agree with Corinne. Leadership is selfless, but it is self-led. It starts with you. That people are watching you, and it is up to you to lead your business. It's up to you to maintain optimism. Now, for me, I'm extremely optimistic for small business as a whole. Small business has always been the answer. Small business has always created most of the jobs in this country, and I believe that will continue. So be a leader with optimism from the inside toward yourself. Think of the resources you have. Corinne mentioned this also. There are tons of resources out there. Just the organizations on this call alone can provide a tremendous amount of help. So recognize that you're not alone. On the outward side of leadership, be in your community. As Ron mentioned, as Jen mentioned, find those local businesses that represent minority-owned businesses. Spread your money around. Use that optimism. If you're one of those people I mentioned before that is afraid to spend your PPP money, now's the time. You know where to spend it. You know how to spend it. So be optimistic and be a leader, because remember, people are watching.
Jen and Ron to take us home. Jen.
Okay, I would say, like, during these uncertain times, it's always better, actually all the time, it's better not to go alone. Surround yourself with a tribe, with an advocacy board, whatever that looks like for you to help support you. I think that also focus on humanity, focus on the humanity of yourself and the humanity of your leadership, the humanity of your people. One of my favorite Maya Angelou quotes is, we use this with our membership quite often: people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I think as leaders, especially during this really stressful time, it's crucial to remember, like, how you make people feel, how you interact with them is one of the most important leadership skills. I mean, I think, you know, like, on the other side of this, it's all going to look different, and we don't really know what that's going to look like. But during this time, perhaps we just take a different perspective of, like, personally, how do we pay attention and care for our own mind, body, and spirit? And then how do we personally care for the mind, body, and spirit of people in our care, people that we touch every day? And I feel like going forward, if we focus on the humanity of leadership in our families and in our business and in our community, all people, I think that it'll just take us into a very different place, and I'm hopeful that that will make some change.
Awesome. I've never seen an individual hang on late on a webinar, but Ron, take us home.
Well, Rhett, as well as the Small Business Roundtable and all of the panelists, as well as the participants, I just want to say thank you for having us on this afternoon. It's a difficult time to focus on the important work for economic justice when our focus and energy and hearts are in the streets protesting police violence and the murder of Black people. It's the same systemic racism that separates Black businesses from white businesses, as well as the opportunities. The system of oppression is vast. It's a vast machine, and a big piece of it is in the federal, state, and local policies that define the opportunities as well as the challenges for Black firms. We've seen since Monday, 11,000 people arrested while the protests continue, and the only thing that we're asking for is equality and justice. These asks have been met with police violence, tear gas, and shots fired. We at the U.S. Black Chamber find these actions completely unacceptable and inexcusable, and stand ready to fight alongside this movement and be a part of the solution. Black lives do matter. And I'll end with the statement that you've heard me say before in reference to a great America. We've heard this comment over and over and over during the last 4 years about making America great again. And we at the U.S. Black Chamber say we want a great America as well. But in order for there to be a great America, there must be a great Black America. And the only way you can create a great Black America is by having great Black businesses. And the only way we have great Black businesses is by having great leadership, great chambers, and support of an entire economy. So again, we want to ask all of the participants here to stand with us, to support our businesses, support our local chambers, as well as supporting the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce. Again, thank you so much for being here. Continue to support all of us and to continue to support our businesses.
Thank you. My thanks. Just a quick reminder that this is one of 3 in a series. We're having a 4th webinar, which will hopefully be released soon, where we're hoping to have some federal officials join us that'll be focused on supporting diversity business owners during COVID-19. Today's conversation couldn't be more timely. I've never seen hundreds of people hang out 5 minutes past an hour. I think the conversation today was critical, and so I just want to thank all of our leaders, because the 4 of you could be many other places right now, and you chose to give us a whole hour during what is a true crisis in this moment. So thank you to everyone for joining. We're putting our contact information up on the screen. We will promise to get all the resources out to you. Please be in touch with us. And with that, everyone, please be healthy, be well, and we look forward to being in touch soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Red. Thanks, Paul.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye, guys.
everyone.
Thank you, guys.